footballgameplan.com, where football makes sense. I'm Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook, joined here with Turron Davenport for another edition of Point-Counterpoint. This time we're at Lincoln Financial Field, where the Philadelphia Eagles played host to the Green Bay Packers and lost 27-13. Turron, let's take a look at the first half. Offensive takeaways from Philadelphia. What were some of your takeaways from the first half offensively?
Well, the first half, the thing that stood out to me the most was the timing on those crossing routes to DORIAL GREEN-BECKHAM. I've told you before about how Wentz has been behind on his throws, but he was very well on point with them, and they were able to move the ball that way. And GREEN-BECKHAM made a couple really nice catches and to set them up. Also, Wendell Smallwood. He's a guy, clearly, I'm very big on him. And when you look at a rookie running back coming in and being able to excel in pass protection is really a good gauge of how often they should play. That touchdown to Carson Wentz, he was able to block one of the defenders that kind of got in the way of the other and allowed Wentz to score the touchdown. So those were the two big takeaways, but primarily for me it was that run, not the running game, but the connection between GREEN-BECKHAM and Wentz.
And I was mostly impressed with their receiving core, the much maligned Philadelphia Eagles receiving core. We saw this receiving core take a beating in the media back against the Giants.
This happened all year.
All year. And so tonight they came out and played well. They caught everything. I'm talking about extending out, catching with the hands, make sure they secured the catch, and then did things after the catch. They came out on fire. Wentz came out on fire. The offensive line did a good job protecting. The running game started to get going when they decided to run the football, but this was an all-passing first half, and I thought the first half was really good with how they were able to move the football down the field. Now, later on in that first half, like in the second quarter, those third and longs, second and long situations still gave the Eagles problems. That's a situation where they're going to have to get better moving forward.
Yeah, they have to figure out a way to get positive yards on first and second down and stay out of third and longs. That's something that has plagued this team all year. It continues to plague them. You want to get Frank Reich mad, you bring up third downs, and that's exactly what he'll tell you. The third and longs is so costly, and when you get into a third and long situation, teams are able to pin their ears back and bring the blitz. And when you have guys, and don't get me wrong, I think this Eagles receiving core is solid, but when you have guys that aren't just going to murder press coverage, that one-on-one coverage with single high, they're going to press, that cover zero at times too, and you're going to see that. And that's what we saw against the Giants. It's something that they have to figure out how to beat.
And you look at, again, not just third and long like 7 or 8, third and 10 plus.
Yeah.
That's where they really struggle. It's almost as if fourth, and I think they're 4 and about 30-something on third and 10 or more. That has to improve. But this was the most crisp I've seen this offense look, in my opinion, all season long. You cover the team on a daily basis, with Eagles Wire, so you see it more often than I do. I only see it on the film, but to me, this was the most crisp this offense looked.
Early in the game it was, and even when they were able to get Wendell Small with the football, he runs so well, when it comes to inside the tackles, getting north, not wasting any movement, and you saw that today. He averaged 4.1 yards per carry. Look, I'm not a genius, but 3 times 4 is 12. You need 10 yards to make a first down. So they were crisp because of the tempo that you saw on the offense, and that's something that I've talked to Jordan Matthews about before. He said that tempo on the offense creates a sense of urgency. I actually asked Frank Reich about that also, just kind of reminiscing to the K-Gun, that Buffalo Bills team, Andre Reed, one of my favorite players of all time. Watching them with the tempo, that's something else that they need to get to, because that seems to be the only way they could get some type of urgency on offense. Otherwise, you get that type of play that you got in the third and fourth quarter, and it just is not going to get it. 13 points against Aaron Rodgers, it's just not going to fly. You cannot do that against Aaron Rodgers. You saw what he was able to do, and I think that's something that was really big. A lot of people needed to watch this game because you had the ball placement. You look at how he put the ball right between the 1 and the 7, to DAVANTE Adams on that slant on the first touchdown. And then you look at the ball placement. I mean, I don't know if Jesus could have thrown a better pass to DAVANTE Adams on his second touchdown. And then the drop in the bucket throw along the sideline right here over Leotis McKelvin, ball placement. And that's something that everybody wants to crown Carson Wentz. And granted, he is a very good young quarterback, but everybody wants to crown him. What you saw today is how a quarterback can make his receivers better, throwing them open. You look at the throw to Bryce Treggs, and I don't mean to go on a rant, but this is just something that really bothers me. You look at the throw to Bryce Treggs, everybody wants to say, okay, well, he should have caught that. Well, look, man, it's a slant, right? It's a crossing route. thrown behind him. Wentz has to see that develop earlier and throw him open. Allow him to accelerate and go get the ball, catch it, and do something with it. You saw polar opposites today in Aaron Rodgers and Carson Wentz.
Well, you led right into my point with the Packers' offensive first half takeaways, and you're right. Their passing game, I thought, was efficient. It was effective. You saw a lot of nonverbal communication going on with Rodgers and his receivers. He'll look at them. Oh, I got off coverage, but throw the speed out. Oh, we're inside the red zone. Guess what they ran? Scissors concept, slant, out combination. It was a touchdown. You know what I'm saying? So those are the things that you see from a veteran and a receiving core that has worked together. Now, granted, on the running game part, that's where they had some issues. I think that's going to be a lingering problem for Green Bay. Whether they figure out who's going to be the guy, the tailback, they have to get better at running the football. But I thought early in the first half, their passing game was just as potent as Philadelphia. And like you mentioned, that touchdown over on the corner of the end zone, you couldn't have placed that ball perfectly. Had you run up there and hand it to him in the breadbasket, that was a perfect throw in a tight pocket. So he stood tall, got the ball out, got it accurately in the corner for a touchdown. What were some of your first half takeaways, in addition to what you talked about earlier?
Yeah, first half takeaways, and I talked to Malcolm Jenkins about this, and he said that it really frustrated them. You watch how they were able to stretch the field horizontally. Ty Montgomery is a guy that we've been high on since Senior Bowl, and even his senior year at Stanford. They brought him in, put him in the backfield, allowed him to run routes out of the backfield. You got Randall Cobb, one of the most shifty receivers, catching the slants and catching the screens, and that was, in effect, their running game. We questioned the running game, but their running game was just a short pass, and that was what they were able to do. 6 for 6 at one point on third down conversions, ended up being I think 10 out of 14. So there were definitely really good plays that they were able to go to. The quick release that didn't allow the guys to get any pressure on Rodgers, and even when they did, he was able to use that baseball term, reverse field, look downfield, and make some good plays. So really, what stood out to me was the horizontal stretch of the Eagles defense.
And you look at the first half defensive takeaways for Philadelphia, and one thing that stood out to me was that they couldn't get off the field on third down. Early on in the ball game, both teams were moving the football up and down the field, but Philly really couldn't get off the field on third downs, which is why they gave up touchdowns and not threes like they did sort of in the second half. But first half, couldn't get off the field on third down, and also they lost contain on Aaron Rodgers, and he killed him on that first drive. Those two big runs, I think he had 2 carries for 25 yards that extended the drive, that led them down to that touchdown right here in this part of the end zone with that scissors concept, that slant out combination. I'm going to bring that up all the time.
Hey, look, it is what it is. That's a part of understanding football. We talk about that all the time.
All the time.
It's concepts. Not everything is stuck to a script. That's not how it works, and that's just, a part of understanding this game.
Yeah, exactly right. And also, I thought from a defensive standpoint in the first half, Marcus Smith did some great things. He stood out. He got some pressures. Unfortunately, he got hurt in the second half. But, first half, I thought he played well. And just defensively, they couldn't get off the field. What were some of your first half defense takeaways?
Quietly, Marcus Smith is working his way back to being worthy of a first-round pick in my book. You talk about his plays against the run, getting the pressure. He's really finding himself once again in a defense that will suit what he brings to the table. So that's an excellent point. My first half takeaways really was just the poor coverage, man. Leotis McKelvin, I'm sorry. I don't know if the hamstring is still an issue or what, but one way or another, he has to go. It's time for Jalen Mills to be named the starter. And obviously Mills gave up a couple passes later in the game, but you just can't allow the things that McKelvin is allowing to happen to happen. I mean, they're playing off, and then you see the guys, running the timing routes, the scissor concepts, the screens, the quick slants, and that's allowing them to keep that timing going. But then you come up and you finally press to disrupt that, and you get, like you mentioned, the Randy Moss waving the hands down the field, a big catch, 50-yarder.
Off the snap, he put his hand out.
Yeah. And the same thing with Nolan Carroll. I've been high on Nolan Carroll, but he got turned around. I think it was Matthew Adams that turned him around. Turned him around completely. And you can't have that. If your defensive coordinator is going to trust you to come up and press, you better get something on him coming off the line. You do not get turned around like that, and that's how those big plays happen. So those are some areas where I think they have to improve.
And to your point, if you're going to press, you can press a guy without touching him. It's just about knowing where you are on the field. And that happened down on that end in the end zone, toward the end zone. If you're going to play tight and the propensity for a slant is going to be high in this situation, step inside a little bit. Make him cross your face or make him fight through you, and then you could either pick it up, undercut him, or play the sideline as your friend. So it's just about knowing where you are on the field. Certain things, I think guys just tend to panic a lot defensively. But a lot of times it's about just getting lined up properly and understanding where you are on the field. Then you can have some success.
Basic alignment and assignment, and that's something that unfortunately this team is lacking from time to time, and you saw it today. So that's a great point.
I mean, you look at the defensive takeaways for Green Bay first half. I thought they had a lot of coverage breakdowns, especially over the middle of the field. A lot of those deep in routes, those over routes, those crossers, whatever you want to call it, wide open over the middle of the field. Also, in the second quarter, they started to get pressure on Carson Wentz in that passing game, and that kind of tied into the second half. But we'll get to that in a second. But what was your first half defensive takeaways for Green Bay?
Well, my first half takeaways was obviously that those slants were not being played. You had Dorial GREEN-BECKHAM able to use his big body to get inside of DAMARIUS Randall, who's coming off of an injury, and that was really allowing them to move the ball down the field. So that would be my major takeaway. Clay Matthews was relegated to a non-factor. He was actually out for a bit when Alan Barber caught him on that
woke
block. Yeah, he definitely woke him up. He gave him some of that good,
right.
and he didn't come back. He had to tap out for that series. But that would probably be my biggest takeaway. And then even just nullifying the pass rush. That's something on the Eagles side that was good for a stretch. But as you mentioned, they just started to be able to get that pressure, whether it be Julius Peppers, their linebackers were able to get in
Perry
there also.
And those guys to get back there and get a sack. And I just look at the second half offensive takeaways. Let's move on to the Eagles. Second half offense. I thought the running game started to get going a little bit with Wendell Smallwood. He started getting those consecutive carries, started having some success, started moving the football, and then they went away from it.
Completely.
And they went to a pass-happy offense, and that got him into trouble, which is why the score ended up being 27-13.
Yeah, we say it again and again. Carson Wentz is not a volume passer. He's not. And if you give him a large volume, and most quarterbacks for that matter, you give them a lot of attempts, they're going to, at some point, make a throw that they want to take back. And that's what you had on the interception. So Wendell Smallwood, I listen, he gets into that rhythm. He was in that rhythm, banging it inside. They were running the stretch plays, and he had 4 consecutive carries, I believe it was, and then they took him out and they started passing the ball. And I didn't see Smallwood get too many more carries after that. And when you're moving on offense, you have to still go with what's allowing you to move.
Exactly.
Balance. You have to find that balance. They didn't find it, and that's really what hurt them, like you mentioned.
And Wentz did a great job running the football as well. You saw a lot of what we saw at North Dakota State, making things happen outside the pocket, but also his lack of movement within the pocket got him into trouble, got him sacked, and that ended up killing drives or pushing these guys back. Also with the bonehead penalties that they were getting, that kind of also killed them defensively. So looking at Green Bay second half offense, I thought they picked up right where they left off in the first half. They started rolling down the field with ease, making things happen. Their running game picked up a little bit. What were some of your second half takeaways for Green Bay offensively?
Well, I saw them start to get Jordy Nelson involved in the game. They were running the curl routes and trying to get the ball to him across the middle, get him the screens, those type of plays that he excels in. That was really my key takeaway. But Davante Adams just continues to show himself to be an outstanding young receiver. And I really like the way he's progressing. You saw what he could do today. 5 receptions, 115. 5 receptions, 2 of which were touchdowns. And when you could have that type of ratio, in a game, you definitely are showing your effectiveness. So that's really something that they were able to go back to in the second half. He didn't have any touchdowns, but they still were able to go to him. But really, Jordy Nelson was a guy they were trying to get involved. James Starks started to get going a little bit on the carries late in the game, to get them a couple first downs also. And
you mentioned Davante Adams. We were standing right here where he had to track, find, and then catch the football over his shoulder. That's a textbook catch. Young receivers out there, that's exactly how you want to do it. Track the football, catch it, secure it, put your hands out the last possible minute, and make the grab. Now, second half defensive takeaways for Philadelphia. Again, they couldn't win those one-on-one battles. You talked about that on the corner. They also couldn't get off the field, and those penalties really doomed them. They had a big third down that they gave the Packers a first down for jumping offside into the neutral zone. Now, yes, it was a ticky-tacky call, but those type of things, is the reason why they couldn't get off the field and extended the drive for Green Bay. What's some of your second half defensive takeaways?
Yeah, I think penalties was something that really irked them. You had they had them held 3rd and 10 it was the play, and it was an incompletion, but Fletcher Cox had the roughing the passer, and I talked to him in the locker room, and he said that was a questionable call. He said that he wasn't really trying to get his hand on his neck, so to speak, but he was getting the shoulder. But I think those penalties, when you have a team that's humming on third down and you stop them, but you have a penalty to negate that stop, that's deflating. So that's definitely something. Aaron Rodgers just continued to make play after play, in the pocket, outside of the pocket, and that hurt him also. So really it was just their inability to get home and get a sack. That's something else that hurt them. Brandon Graham, Connor Barr, when these guys were eliminated somewhat in the second half, so that hurt them as well. Secondary, the back end is only as good as the front end, and the front end was not excelling the way they normally do, which surprised me because I thought that was one of the key advantages for the Eagles in this game.
Especially with all those guys out up front for Green Bay. And you look at the Green Bay Packers defensive takeaways, that pressure, like we talked about from the first half, the back end of the first half, intensified in the second half. They started to get to Wentz. They forced some bad decisions. They got an interception. They forced him to sail that ball high. The defense just picked up right where it left off, and it turned up the heat, actually. And I think it played a big role in why they won this game.
Yeah, it definitely played a big role, but it's just, when you have those inefficiencies on offense, and it was a series of things that just kept the Eagles offense from doing what they needed to do to keep the game close. And when you're within one score and you abandon the run, I mean, there just really is no excuse to that. And as an offensive coordinator, me personally, if I was an offensive coordinator, what I want to do is dictate to them how this game is going to go, especially home where you're 4-0.
Right.
I want to dictate, okay, you guys are 7th in the league in stopping the run. Well, guess what? We're going to break you by defeating you at what you're good at. And they were doing it. That's the thing that's so frustrating about it. They were doing that, and they completely got away from it.
And it was frustrating to see because as a former running back, I love seeing those two tight ends, that H-back come out there, and you run that inside zone, you run in stretch, you run some gap plays, you're doing what you have to do to get it done. And they was able to run downhill against that 3-4 defense. Guys were getting into that groove, but it just went away from it. I was frustrated for the backs that they went away from it, but that's offensive football in the NFL. You have to kind of find that balance, and you want to get your young quarterback some reps, some burn, but stick with what is working. You see Green Bay does it. You see other teams do it. Sometimes you just got to stick with the hot hand. And Wentz played well, and they could have joined him by throwing the running game in there also. But when they went to a full Wentz game, that's when they're not built for that just yet. And that's where they got into trouble. So
balance is
always the key in this ball game. All right, Turron, let's hand out some Player of the Game awards. For me, for the Philadelphia Eagles Offensive Player of the Game, I'm going to have to give it to the entire receiving corps. All those guys stepped up big and made catches, did things after the catch, even the tight end position. So wide receivers and tight ends, I couldn't just pick one. I went with the entire unit. That's who gets Player of the Game for me. Who is an Offensive Player of the Game for you?
Well, I'm going to go ahead and pick one receiver, and that's DORIAL GREEN-BECKHAM. We talked about earlier how he was able to get in that rhythm. 6 catches, 82 yards. Somehow, later in the game, they got away from what was working, but he will be my Offensive Player of the Game for them just because of the start that he had. Defensive
Player of the Game for me, I look at the second level. Linebacker Jordan Hicks. I thought he played a great game. 6 solo stops. He had a quarterback hurry as well. He's really stepping up big in his second season coming out of Texas.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to pick a different player, but we're sharing a brain there because one of the things that stood out to me was one of the plays that he made later in the game, the way he closed on Aaron Rodgers, man. It was like, he was shot out of cannon, and he closed on him and was able to get that hurry. So you also look at just what he was able to do as far as making the tackles. He had a couple key stops, so he would definitely be my Defensive Player of the Game as well for the Eagles.
Now, moving on to Green Bay Offensive Player of the Game, I think we probably share the same brain on this one as well. You have to give to DAVANTE Adams. I mean, what he put on display out here on the field was impressive. 5 catches, 2 of which were touchdowns, over 100 yards, 2 spectacular catches, and an outstanding move on that end of the field where he lost Nolan Carroll on a double move, got inside, got the touchdown. So, again, DAVANTE had. I couldn't give it to no one else but him.
Yeah, I'm agree with you on that one. And he just showed you everything that you want to see from a wide receiver. This game that he put on today was really, it's a coaching tape. You watch him work the release. He did that effectively. You watch him catch the slant with his hands and at the top of his route, give that little move to the outside to free himself up, to clear up more space for his quarterback to throw the football. The concentration on the second touchdown, and then just the tracking the football, winning at the line of scrimmage, and the textbook fading to the football. He did it beautifully. It's hard to pick anybody other than Adams, honestly.
And defensive player of the game, I'm going to go with a guy that has had some struggles this season but has played well. He played well in this ball game, and that's LADARIUS GUNTER.
Oh, yeah.
From Miami.
Yeah.
He played well, man. He played well tonight. I thought he did a good job, and I'm going to give him props by saying he's a player of the game defensively for Green Bay.
Yeah, GUNTER, an old Senior Bowl favorite, you know, and it's good to see him out here doing well. I think Randall played well later in the game also. He's going to be my standout. And just some of the things that he was able to do as far as fighting through blocks on the screens and making the tackle. He had the key one to Jordan Matthews on the screen. He was able to fight through the block. I forget who the receiver was and bring him down. And just coming back and reinforcing that pass defense was a big thing for Randall. I mean, he did get beat a couple times, but he would be my guy that I would pick as far as defensive MVP is concerned.
So that's a wrap from Lincoln Financial Field. Once again, the Philadelphia Eagles lose tonight to the Green Bay Packers, 27-13. I'm Emory Hunt, the czar of the playbook with Football Game Plan. You can find me on Twitter at FBallGamePlan.
And I'm Turron Davenport. You can find me on Twitter at TDavenport_NFL of the EaglesWire.usatoday.com, as well as CSN Sportsnet Central.
And this was another edition of Point Counterpoint. We'll catch you guys another time.